Hello and welcome to our discussion on understanding cost classifications, specifically the product versus period costs. So we've had a variety of lectures talking about the different cost classifications in managerial accounting. That cost classification is very important in managerial accounting. Understanding cost is really what managerial accounting is all about. The classification we're going to look at today is product versus period costs. So here, product costs. When we think of a product cost, as the name implies, it's the cost related to the actual manufacturing of a product. So it goes into that product. This is time spent on that product. This is material that goes into that product. Any machine work that goes into that product. It's directly related to that product or production in general. So we refer to this as manufacturing, factory, or production. Anytime you see those particular terms, we're generally talking about product costs. From a managerial accounting perspective, any of those costs eventually attach to the inventory we are producing. Going back to the cost of goods sold concept from financial accounting, that's what product costs are. Product costs will flow into cost of goods sold. But they flow through a variety of other accounts first. They generally start off as assets, and we'll talk about the different types of assets. They do not get expensed. So keep in mind, they are costs, but they are not expenses until the product is sold. And that's where cost of goods sold comes into play. The thought here is that we're trying to match the revenue with the expense, so we want to hold it as an asset because it is still a benefit. We're building this product, and the value of that asset is growing as we add more to it, but we do not want to count it as an expense until the period it's sold. We want to reflect both the both the revenue and the expense in that same period so we can have a good idea of what the true profit was. Now, period costs, on the other hand, are basically those that do not relate to production. Instead, they relate to selling. So we could be talking about the sales floor, the sales staff, the store, the office, which are more administrative, or sometimes these are referred to as headquarters or corporate. These are often referred to as selling general administrative costs. These include things like selling. They could include rent related to any of those, the sales office, the store, the office, the headquarters, rent, utilities, anything related not to the factory, but to the headquarters of the store or something like that. So when we talk about utilities or rent or depreciation, that in and of itself isn't enough. You need to know, what was that rent for? Was it for the factory or was it for the store? You need to know, what were the utilities for? What was the depreciation for? What staff are we talking about if we're talking about their labor? So the term overhead can be used for both items. There is manufacturing overhead, but there is also general overhead as well. General overhead will be considered a period cost, and we'll talk about manufacturing overhead separately. But any of these period costs, they get that name from the fact that they're expensed in that period. They're not tied to sales. We expense them that period regardless of what we've sold, because they don't match any product individually anyways, so there's no use trying to match them to a current sale. So let's take a look at the product costs in more detail, because this is where we tend to have the complication. The first product cost is raw materials. These are assets and no work has been performed on them yet. So this is when we purchase the materials and they're not used in production yet. They're just sitting there in the warehouse, in the supply room, whatever. Now, as soon as we start working on those materials, so keep in mind, we have the raw materials. Once we start converting them to a finished product, we start working on them, we start mixing them, we add in labor, we add in overhead. This is where we start through work in process. Now, different products have a different length of time as far as how long it takes to complete, but while they're in progress, they stay in this account. They're not yet finished, they're still considered an asset, and they're not yet ready to sell. If they were ready to sell, this would move over to finished goods inventory. So this is where we took our work in process, we added more materials, more labor, and more overhead, and now the product's ready to sell. Keep in mind it is still an asset until it is sold, but it's ready to sell. Now this is similar to a merchandising firm or a retail firm when we talk about their inventory account where they go buy and sell inventory. That would be similar to their purchased inventory account because they're not working on it. They've bought it and they're now ready to sell it. So now let's talk just briefly about overhead application. This is something we cover in much more detail in later chapters, but we do need to cover a little bit to fully understand product costs. Once we've started working on the materials, I mentioned how we're converting them into a finished product. The term conversion cost, this is important, this is another classification. The term conversion cost includes both direct labor and factory overhead. So labor, this is where you have the direct labor, you have people working on the product, putting it together. This is considered manual conversion. Somebody is manually doing something. Factory overhead, where you have the machines doing something, this is like an automated conversion. But they're both conversion costs, so it's important to understand that. Now, overhead itself. So again, we could be talking about a lot of things. It's not just the machine cost. It's not just utilities. This could also be factory supervisors that aren't working directly on the product, but they're overseeing production in general. Could be a lot of different things included in there. Depreciation of the factory, insurance for the factory. But the allocation of overhead is important. There are a variety of ways to do this that we're going to cover in later sections. But the basic way is to take the total estimated overhead costs and divide them by the total estimated units of a cost driver, like labor hours or machine hours. That way you have a rate per hour. As every product goes through the process, you can then apply overhead based on how many hours it used. Now, it's not the same as a true labor rate per hour, but we're applying overhead based on either labor hours or machine hours. Again, there are a variety of other options that we'll cover in later classes. Much more to come in a later lecture, but this is a good start. And that covers what we wanted to talk about for product versus period costs. Hopefully that's helped to clarify some of the concepts. But as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for watching my accounting video on YouTube.com. I hope you've enjoyed that information. Accounting can be a difficult topic to conquer, and sometimes you just need additional information or assistance outside of the classroom. If you feel like you need some additional information, some additional resources, come visit my Udemy.com course. I have a variety of financial and managerial cost accounting courses available that may be able to assist you if you're having trouble with a particular course. In these courses at Udemy.com, I have additional lectures on a variety of accounting topics. We also have downloadable Excel templates for all the various practice exercises we work, as well as a video walkthrough of the solution. I continue to update these practice exercises, so even after you join, you may see some new exercises. It's all geared toward helping you to understand the topics. So in addition to those additional lectures and the practice exercises, we also have quizzes and tests to help gauge your understanding of the topic. That may give you a better idea if there's something you need to go back and learn a little bit more about, read more about, watch a video on. We also have downloadable study notes that really try to drive that home. There's a downloadable textbook with it. So feel free to come join this class, come take a look at it. You can find this at udemy.com if you search for Severson, or you can just Google Severson Udemy Accounting to see a list of all the courses that are currently available. Again, I'm working on new courses as we go. Right now, you'll see some financial and managerial accounting courses out there. I'm working on the intermediate and advanced side of those particular courses as well, so you may see new ones out there as well. Now, email me for a special 50% off coupon code. You can send an email to chrisseverson@hotmail.com, and I will respond with that code. It's a different code for every course, depending on which one you want. I can also respond with the actual link to that course. Now, all courses at udemy.com have lifetime access, and there's also a money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. So come check out my course at udemy.com and see if it may be a fit for you. Thank you for your time.